Hi, welcome to OM's Planetary Watch. My name's Olga Morales. And you know what? It's actually eclipse season actually starts now. Like we're like only, what is it, 17 days before we have the first solar eclipse of the year of 2026, which happens to be also the beginning of the Chinese New Year calendar and the Fire Horse year. So it's really important um, because it's not just the actual eclipses between a solar and lunar eclipse that's important. It's the lead up to it. Some people even say that it can be 90 days before. But there was one particular astrologer whose work I've followed for many years, since actually over 20 years since I've been doing GAN work. And his research that he did in the 1950s focused actually on the lead up. And he called them all eclipses and moon wobbles. And actually starts having an impact 2 weeks before the actual eclipse and 1 week later. So it's quite intense. And I want to explain to you what it all means. So it was discovered, the moon wobble was discovered by Carl Payne Toby, if you want to research him. In the 1950s, he was doing a lot of research, okay? And he says that all solar and lunar eclipses are moon wobbles. And what did he mean by that? It's a period of 3 weeks, as I just said, 2 weeks before and 1 week after the exact event. So he said during the moon wobble periods, time and space are unstable. Okay. He found his research showed that during moon wobbles, there are increased conditions for natural disasters, floods, bizarre weather patterns, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tornadoes, plane crashes, boat, train, or car accidents, explosions, fires, riots, and mass murder, increased accidents and violence, political and personal upheavals. And the last one is stock market instability. Now, that's something I focus on quite a lot. I do my website and my work is all it's called Astrology for GAN Traders. I've dedicated the last 22 years to studying cycles in the stock market, but also in the mundane world because you can't really not do that as well. And I followed WD Gan's work. Okay, so we need to understand these cycles. And how they have an impact on pretty much every aspect of life. Okay, so these are the two eclipses that are coming up. As I said, we have a solar eclipse on the 17th of February, which is in Aquarius, 28 degrees of Aquarius. I've already done videos on this, so I don't want to go in it too much, but this is actually also square Uranus, a planet of sudden changes and revolution and expect the unexpected. Okay, so this is important. I've done a few, I've already done some videos on it. And this is a lunar eclipse on the 3rd. This is a total lunar eclipse. And when they're total, you can see that the sun and the moon are actually very close to the lunar nodes. Okay, they were thought to be like the dragon's head and the dragon's tail eating the eclipse coming up and eating the eclipses, all right? So the closer they are, the more intense they are. So I feel that this lunar eclipse is going to be quite powerful, okay? Even though this one's square to Uranus, that we can expect something to shake us up a little bit there. But this one is also intense because it's a closer actual eclipse, okay? And we're actually in the middle. When there's a full moon, which is a lunar eclipse, the Earth is in the middle. So it has a bigger pull on us, it has a bigger pull on our emotions, also on the tides of the Earth. Everything sort of moves a little bit. So here we go. He says that it can influence instability in the stock market. I'm going to give you some examples, and if you're into studying cycles for the stock market, you should be really focusing on these cycles and have a look back and just don't believe me. Okay, so I've plotted. I'm just going to show you some, and I haven't cherry picked them because the more you do, the more you see that they have statistically you can see that eclipses have actually over many cycles, you can see that there is always some sort of reaction and impact, uh, you know, either on the day of the eclipse or leading up to it, as I've just explained. So here are a few on the S&P 500 recently. You can see where they are. This one's just a little bit. And this is what we're expecting, okay? That's coming up soon. These are more for you to look at. Often it's either there's a correction that way or it actually brings in a bottom, okay? But there's always tends to be something, either a top and then a reversal or actually a bottom. Now, you're going to like this if you're trading silver or gold, and we know how much has happened the last couple of days. The ancients always had planets ruling metals, okay? So the sun rules gold, the moon rules silver, Venus rules copper, Mars iron, Mercury quicksilver, Jupiter tin, and Saturn lead. Now, this chart is actually for gold, and you can see that the eclipses on the gold cycles is actually really quite strong. Prove it to yourself. Don't believe me. I put in the charts up. You just need to get an ephemeris or somewhere where you can see where all the eclipses are and have a look back in time, because this is what you need to do. Gant says you always have to look back, as the future is a repetition of the past. So if you know these cycles, you can have a look back. I mean, look at these, for example, okay? And this one here, this is in a bottom. So there's definitely a cycle there, okay? And the other one is also for silver. Similar thing. Remember, silver's ruled by the moon. So the sun and the moon are involved in these two prime metals. Now, I found something interesting about copper. Copper is said to be ruled by Venus, okay? And the word, actually, copper comes from Cyprus, because in Cyprus, Aphrodite was supposed to have been born there. And the Greek word for copper is coprum and comes from Cyprus. And so, but I actually read in a book, and I can't remember where I read it, but it said that crypto is also related to Venus and copper. And this makes sense to me, because if you know the story of Venus, she spends 40 days and nights in the underworld, invisible, which is the underworld is crypt, whatever's hidden, right, underneath, where they used to bury everybody. Or when you go to a cathedral, there's a crypt and everyone's buried underground. It's a terrible feeling. Every time I go in a crypt, the hairs on my arms stick up. So isn't that interesting that a lot of our words are directly associated with either planets or stars, or days of the weeks, as I've explained to you before. All the symbolism comes from the cosmos. Okay. And now let me look at this. This is like blew me away. Every time I do this sort of research, something comes up, and this is what I love. It's spontaneous. I start looking at something and I keep finding things. Now, if you'd never heard about Saros cycles, so there's different ways of us to look at the sun and the moon: solar lunar cycles, eclipses, okay? And one of them is that they belong to the same Saros family, right? So eclipses start at the very top, either at the North Pole or the South Pole, and they twirl around the Earth like this, okay? And it takes, they can be between 12,000 to 13,000 years, okay? In each family, there's between 70 to 72 eclipses, and they all belong to that family. And so you can study these families, right? So this particular one, I'm just looking at the lunar eclipse because I think this is going to be more important, is Saros 133, okay? Now, that what I found is that exactly 90 years ago, which is the same Saros cycle, in 1936, this chart here is part of the family. Now, 5 times 18 obviously is 90 years. Now, the other thing that's important about this one is that they both end in 6, the year ending in 6. And I did a whole video on this, okay? And that is incredible, because Gann always says that you need to look, when you're looking ahead, you look at this is to do with numerology, you look at the years ending in the same digit to get a cycle, okay? So this is 90 years back, 1936. So if you're interested in this sort of work, I would recommend you have a look back to 1936 and see what was happening. Let me know in the comments what you find, because I love hearing other people's research and whatever they have. Some people are very much into history, and you can see how these cycles work. But it's not only that. Of course, if we keep going back, which I've done before, it takes us, if we go back 360 years, which is 20 times 18, 18 is our Saros cycle, we go back to 1666, which is, I've already spoken about that. And that was also the year of the fire horse. Okay. So go back to some of my previous videos. So all these cycles are actually very much in like netted like that between the sun and the moon. And like it's incredible. Our numbers come from the planets, their cycles. I mean, when you think of it, how did the ancients, why did they start counting in the first place? Because they're watching their gods transverse the heavens. Especially the first things they used to do, they found bone with all the cycle of the moon in it, just, dug into the bone. And so that was probably the first one they were watching, because it was the easiest one, and they'd get 28 days for the moon. Okay. And so, this is how the whole thing of mathematics. So when I started astrology, we didn't have software. We had to do everything by hand. And most of our lessons were just the maths part of it, which would take up the whole year just to refine your skills of casting these charts, erecting the charts, doing the mathematics. So it is very mathematical. Okay. And it's based on actually the planetary cycles. So isn't it amazing? All these things are linked. There's nothing random here. So if you're interested, I recommend you watch my previous videos here. This is to do with the fire horse here, as I just said. They all end in 6, and also the San Francisco earthquake is linked to this one. And then also this one, Moon Secret in Stones, where I talk about the 18 and 19 year cycle, which is very, very important for any type of GAN work. And also, if you've ever looked at I think I've already put this in one of the videos. If you look at the tarot cards and major arcana, which again are encoded with ancient mysteries, is that the moon, the number for the moon is 18, and the number for the sun is 19. And that's our solar lunar calendar. Okay. And the stones here, I actually visited this place here. It actually, when you count the stones, there are actually 19 stones around this circle here. Okay. So have a look at this if you're interested in what I'm talking about. I think you should be, because it's one of the foundation of a lot of cycles, even property cycles. So yeah, so thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. So be prepared. We're already in the period before the eclipse, okay? And so that's when, as Toby says, that's when time and space become unstable. So be prepared for any changes. And astrology and cycles help us. It's not about prediction, it's about being prepared for things. And that's what the advantage of understanding these cycles, and why I love teaching them. I do have lessons if you're interested in just getting the basics. I'm preparing new ones all the time. And thanks for listening.